Man, I don't know if we need to be showing that right now. That that is some
That's pretty.
juice.
Welcome to the season 3 of the Kayak Bass Connection podcast. We're the official podcast of the Southern Illinois Kayak Tournament Trail, or Kayak Club Tournament Trail. I'm your host, Jared, and let's talk some bass fishing. Hey, now this is going to be a really unique episode. Welcome to Flukeville. We're going to concentrate on fishing with the fluke bait today. We are joined by two anglers that are going to be familiar names. They've had great success using fluke baits and are ready and willing to share some of their secrets with this technique. Regular listeners to the podcast will recognize these folks, but if you're new, let me go ahead and introduce these two great guys. So we have Joshua Lincoln from St. Louis, Missouri. He's best known as a tournament director for Southern Illinois Kayak Club, also known as SICK. But the little known secret is that he is also one heck of a bass fisherman. So we also have Kendall Mazo from Heron, Illinois, down in Southern Illinois. He's also a SICK kayak tournament angler. He's also had great success with fluke baits. So both of you guys, thank you for taking your time this morning.
Happy to be here.
100%.
We've been talking about doing this episode for a long time, and I tell you, I've been especially excited because I don't think I've ever fished a fluke. So I'm really anxious to hear what you guys have to say. Why do you think this bait is so effective?
You want to take that one, Kendall, or you want me to start?
I mean, for me personally, and I'm sure Josh, you could probably agree with some of these points, but it's just such a versatile bait. You know, whether you're fishing grass, you're fishing timber, you're fishing shallow. I mean, shoot, you could even make that bait fish deep, and that's some of the juice that I use, and I'll talk about here in a bit. But it's just such a versatile bait.
That he stole the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it was versatile bait. I call it the 4x4 lure of my tackle box, right? Because it's going to get you anywhere you want to go. It's going to be weedless, and then you can also, like you said, you can fish it deep, you can fish it as top water, you can fish it slow, you can fish it fast, and they all work.
So how do you typically rig a fluke for your largemouth bass or any of your tournament fishing?
Well, it's crazy that fluke, right, is what we all call it. And fluke is just Zoom's version of this bait. So the bait is so great that it dominates the category. And then rigging it, I use a 4/0 extra wide gap hook. And then I rig it way different than anybody else I've seen online. So when I rig it, I go through the nose of that bait and I pop it out and I just like a standard
Like
Texas
a Texas rig?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I go through the back, but I don't know if I can see it in the camera. What I do differently than everybody else is, I don't know if you can tell on there, but that fluke is upside down.
Yeah, it is. The belly's pointing up.
The belly's pointing up. And Kendall, I don't know if you rig yours upside down, but the next time you're out there, rig one upside down. It doubles, if not triples, the action when you're doing like the darting motions. And then when you're coming through the thickest grass, instead of having to like texpose that hook into the plastic and potentially not getting it out, when that fish comes and hits it, because it's that in that open belly part, that bait just like slides down, and the hookup ratio is out of this world.
Man, I don't know if we need to be showing that right now. That that is some
That's pretty.
juice. No, it's funny
I
that you
don't.
say that because yeah, I mean, look at mine. I just, I rig it through the slits on the bottom and
Yep.
then through the top and texpose it. And it's funny enough because with my paddle tails, I rig those upside down, to where the paddle's facing up, and I never thought to
Mhm.
do a fluke that way.
I don't think it's any secret. I saw it on Tactical Bassin like 5 or 6 years ago, and I tried it, and it was just like night and day different. Like when that fluke, when you got it rigged up, it's kind of like, okay, it darts and it kind of like meanders, but when you do it upside down, it's much more like a walking bait almost, where it's like real sharp and just like doom,
Huh.
doom, doom.
Why do you think that is? Is it just maybe like the displacement in the water because the fat side is up?
I don't know if it's like something where that water's hitting like that open and it's just like giving it a path to go. I'm not sure, but I've had a lot of success on the upside down fluke, and it's
Uh,
the
Crazy.
only way I rig it at this point.
That's incredible.
And that kind of goes to show, when you're having a day on the water and, you come up to somebody and you're like, what are you throwing? And you see them catching them and you're not catching them. And they
That's
tell
right.
you, Cinco or
Yeah,
chatterbait or something. And you're like, I'm throwing that exact bait. But sometimes it might be how you're rigging it or the color or presentation.
yeah, 100%. I mean, even down to if you and me are out there and I could tell you, hey, I'm throwing it on albino fluke, and you know that I rigged it upside down, but you could be throwing a super line hook instead of a standard hook, and then your bait could be falling that much faster because naturally this fluke wants to float. So depending all on the hook is how well it's going to slow down or sink.
Yeah,
A
and
lot of
also
people,
the hook placement. So, I mean, where
yeah.
you're putting it further down the body or up towards the front, like the size of the hook, like I tend to use a 3/0 hook because I want the hook placement up towards the nose. Whether like you, it looks like you use a little bit of bigger hook and the hook is coming back down. So I think it's gonna stay a little bit flatter on yours.
Yeah, a little bit flatter, but it still is nose heavy. So when that bait's falling in the water, it's still nose heavy. And then when you twitch it, that nose instantly, because that's where your hook's at, instantly picks up and then like darts and then falls back down again.
So it gives you some real erratic action then there.
It does.
So now you mentioned line. So what kind of line do you guys prefer to use when throwing flukes?
For me, honestly, I would rather throw my fluke on a spinning rod than my bait caster. Usually I'll have I mean, for purposes of, I got 3 or 4 bait casters on the deck and I have those tied up with other things that are technique
Hmm.
specific. And, that's what we all learned on was spin cast rods. And that's, fluke is my confidence bait. So I like throwing it on like 10, 12 pound, nothing too crazy, nothing too special.
Okay. So what kind of power is your spinning rod then? Is it like a medium heavy or heavy, light,
Medium,
medium? What medium? Okay.
just plain Jane medium.
What about you, Josh?
I'd like to throw mine on a bait caster, and I've got a really nice setup for it. I do a 6'6". Most of my rods in the kayak are all 7'3", but I really like for my fluke rod, and I've got a dedicated rod for it. It's a 6'6" St. Croix Mojo bass, and it's a medium extra fast tip, and it just allows me to just move that bait just how I want it, and then it's soft enough to handle those bites. Because a lot of times when you get those bites, it's not necessarily where you feel that bite. It's like you're popping the bait, popping the bait, popping the bait, and then the next time you go to pop that bait, that fish is on there, and that rod is going to load up. But when it comes to line, it changes a lot for me. Past couple of years, I've been doing a braid the leader and just going braid, and then to like a 12 or 10 pound leader going to that fluke.
Okay.
But I do
Kendall, did
like,
you mention what line you're using?
Yeah, usually
Or
like
did I
10 to
miss
12 pounds
10 to 12?
on the spinning
You
rod.
doing what type of line?
Fluoro.
Okay. So a little different
Yep.
techniques there. Both
But
obviously work
I
pretty
mean,
good.
honestly, up until a couple years ago, I've always used mono my entire life, and that worked just
Hmm.
fine. So I
yeah,
don't know.
Yep.
I can't say that it makes a difference, but the past couple years, the craze has been, fluoro this, fluoro that, braid this, braid that. So maybe
for
I'm just
sure.
a victim to that. But
I think we all do a little bit.
mono,
Market.
yeah, mono works just fine. And Josh is 100% correct. I mean, most of my bites, I don't know that he laid it out this way, but most of my bites will come on that pause from the fluke. And, another name for the fluke is soft jerk bait, right? So
Okay.
that's the action that if you can picture in the water that you're trying to mimic as a fleeing fish.
Yeah, fleeing, dying fish. Yeah,
Interesting. So you guys, if you look at it, you guys basically have two fairly different approaches to fishing this bait. Both of you are having success with it. That's great. What about color? What comes in mind when you choose different colors, or do you have different colors?
I've got three colors that I keep in the boat. One of which is albino, which is this one here. Very shad like, but very basic. There's not a lot going on with it. My other color is smoking shad. It's very shad like, but it's got
All
a
right.
lot of glitter in it.
Okay.
And then the third color, which I didn't think was a big deal until a recent fishing trip I had a couple years ago, is the green pumpkin. It really doesn't matter. It's more of like a bluegill imitator. So if I'm walking through the store and I see watermelon red or green pumpkin, that one I'm not as picky on. But as long as I have one in the boat,
Kendall, what about you? What colors do you like?
For me, it's like clear or muddy water. So, the white or the shad colors, they work out really great for the clear water. And one thing, and Josh kind of alluded to it earlier, like this bait is not actually called a fluke. That's Zoom's version of it. So I actually like the Berkeley, the power jerk shads. They have the power bait scent in them, and I don't know, I just like the way that they rig and stay on the hook. The one thing that gets annoying about fluke fishing, especially when you just put it on a wide gap hook, this tends to want to slide down after you catch a few
Yep.
fish. And I don't know, I've just had more success with the power bait. The Berkeley one's holding up a little bit better. And then there's things that you can do to stop it. I've seen guys like put pegs on the top of their hook and on the bottom of their hook, like rubber pegs, and it kind of helps
Oh,
the
okay.
bait from sliding. So I like the white ones and the silver flake for clear water. But I do have some, they make a baby bass color that's has produced well for me as well. Has some green and kind
Yeah,
of,
that gold flake in there. Yeah.
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 Yeah, go ahead.
I never thought color was a big deal. The first couple of years I fished flukes, it was just always a shad color, until I had one trip where I went out actually with my boss and we were fishing and I was throwing a fluke in a perfect area where a fluke should work and I wasn't catching anything and my boss was just ripping them in left and right. And throughout the trip, I finally made the decision and I think I had just like one or two in like a watermelon red in my bag. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it because he was catching some fish on a little bit darker bait. And I mean, the first cast I did with a different color fluke, and it was on. I fished that fluke until I ran out of all three or four of them that I had left, and I caught like two or three fish over 4 pounds on them, and it was a great day, and
Nice.
I learned a lot about. It wasn't that they weren't biting a fluke; it was that they weren't biting the right color fluke, which I didn't think was ever an issue. I just thought it was okay. They're just not biting a fluke today.
I know, and that's tough. It's like, do you switch baits or do you switch colors?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll add a little jazz and I use those dip it pins, kind of
Yeah.
customize the tail a little bit with some
I haven't done
chartreuse or
that, but I
something like
probably will
that.
now.
Yeah, put a little juice on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just make the tip a little bit brighter than, especially in dark water. I presume you would do that, or just do
Yeah.
it just as a highlight. So both of you mentioned earlier that this is especially effective in grass. Is there any
Yeah.
type of grass that you found that it doesn't work well in?
I think it works well in a lot of grass. I don't know if it necessarily works, and I don't know if I'm not the grass expert, but that eel grass where it's like really thin and slimy, that doesn't work very well in there. But I love taking this bait just like along like a grass line because you can throw that bait all the way up onto the ground almost, work it off the bank, work it over the top of all that thick grass, like a frog, right? So you got that frog topwater action, and then you get it to the edge of that grass, and you can just let that thing nosedive right off the edge. And as it's going down and floating, I've got a lot of bites like that. Or you can work it parallel to that grass, and just kind of work it all the way back to you. And I get a lot of bites from those fish that are living in that grass, just darting out, grabbing it, and trying to dart back in. Which is kind of why I like that braid, because if they really get into that thick stuff, I can horse them out a little bit better. But
Now you sent me a video. Let me see if this would be a good time to play that. Let's see if it can. Good fluke bass.
yeah, it's not a great bass itself, but it's a great video of showing kind of how I fished the fluke. And I think on that particular day was those fish were a little bit more aggressive, and there was a nice weed line that we were fishing and catching fish, and you can see that upside down fluke there in the video. So it's true.
Tournament day, you got your wristband on.
Yeah, I think it was the day after a tournament, but it's a couple twitch, pause, twitch, and then
Yeah.
you go to twitch and that fish is just there, and it's for me, it's making sure that you just kind of keep contact with that fish and don't give them any slack.
Yeah, nice.
But it's not a big fish, but it kind of gives the idea.
Two of your fish could eat two of my fish.
Yeah. But
Sounds like you're getting
kinda,
whooped that day, Josh.
I think there is.
I started getting whooped that day, and then I once kind of from this moment on, I went on a clinic and then I ended up catching an almost 8-pounder to in the day.
Wow.
So
Dang.
it was
Wow.
a 22-inch fish. I'll have to send the photo and prove
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah. We'll pop that in here.
yeah, it was a great day.
Awesome.
Nice.
But yeah, I do like that Concept Z fishing reel. It throws light baits so well, and that's kind of like that is my fluke setup right there, and it's
Okay.
just allows me to throw that little weightless bait just a stupid far away, and get it right where I want it every single time.
Nice. So what kind of, you said Concept Z, who makes that?
That's by 13 Fishing. It's that bright orange reel. If you ever see me on the water, you can spot that thing from a mile away, and you can tell if I'm fluke fishing or not.
So what about wood? Wood, rock, and grass are primary structures that I see us fishing a lot, especially in our tournament series. So how does a fluke do around wood?
You want to take that one, Kendall?
I'd say going back to the earlier segment, I mean, it's versatile. You can throw this thing anywhere. I mean, I even throw it through pads. One of my favorite way to fish a fluke, honestly, is through pads and heavy grass, especially if you're throwing it weightless. You can just let it fall off those lily pads and then, jerk, let it fall, bring it back up on the pad, let it fall off. You can do so many things with it. I mean, it's pretty well. I mean, it's on a string. You can do whatever you want with that fluke. So it's just all about how you present it and your speed, slow it down, pick it up, let it sit there. Shoot, you can even dead stick it. I've dead stick flutes in another part of the country, fishing for hybrids and stripers and stuff like that. So I mean, you can do whatever you want with it. Something that I do a little bit different. If I am fishing heavy cover or grass, I will leave it weightless. But if I'm fishing open water, I like to add a little bit of weight to it. I'll put a worm weight on it or a bullet weight. And the big thing is I've tried it pegged and unpegged. If you peg it, it completely tears up the action. It's worthless. But if you leave it unpegged, that bullet weight slides down or that worm weight slides down, and you can get it deeper in the water column. So just something a little different.
Have to give that one a try. I know a lot of people use a fluke as like a Carolina rig bait, because they get that same darting action type that on the bottom, with that Carolina rig. So that sounds very similar. Why I think that would work as well.
Yeah, that would be good in some of your deeper lakes. So we've talked about rod and reel combos. We've talked about colors a little bit. What about size? Do flukes come in different sizes from like Berkeley or from Zoom?
They come, yeah. And if you're talking fluke itself, which is a Zoom product, it comes, I think, in 3 different sizes. It comes in the mini, the magnum, and then when I say fluke, it's the Zoom salty super fluke. And that's the standard size you want. That's the right fork tail. You don't want the paddle tail or anything like that. But yeah, that is the fluke, And very rarely I've got a couple of the magnums that like I've thrown on like Goldeneye where the gizzard shatter giant in there, and those fish are catered to eating big baits, and they can be very effective. 9 times out of 10, I'm throwing the standard super fluke.
What about you, Kendall, size wise?
For me, it's the 5 inch. I don't know where that falls in with the Zoom deals, but generally all I buy is the 5 inch. Like I think I went through 10 packs last year of power bait flukes or jerk shads, excuse me.
Nice.
Don't want to have copyright here.
Yeah.
But something I have we go to Arkansas, me and a buddy go to Arkansas every year and chase stripers and hybrids and white bass and stuff. And the guy that's down there, he makes plastic baits and he usually always gives us a bunch to send home just
Nice.
to try out and stuff like that. But they do it a little different. There's some like 2.5, 3 inch ones,
Mm-hmm.
all different colors. He even makes 1.5 inch flukes.
Man, I could see where those would be
Yeah.
deadly.
So I mean, they're deadly on crappie, on
Yeah.
bass, everything. I mean, different colors. It's got smoke, you got
Mm.
pink,
Hmm.
white, different things like that. So if I'm having, like I said, my go-to is the 5 inch. But if I'm at a really pressured lake or I'm having a tough day and it's time to downsize, I'll throw one of those on a drop shot or just, rig it on a jig head. And man,
Yeah, that was going to be the next question about, do you notice, on pressured lakes, flukes, the smaller flukes work better than larger ones, or have you noticed any difference?
I think flukes are just a great bait in general on pressured lakes. I don't think they see them as much, and it's just such a versatile and soft moving bait that they get a lot of bites. And then the other thing you can really do, not that I do it all that often, but on a really pressured lake, is I do what Kendall does, and I would probably change to a spinning setup, and I drop to maybe a 6 or 8 pound line and just kind of really like finesse them if it's getting that tough.
For sure.
So we've talked. Go ahead, Kendall.
No, I was just saying, for sure, like the sometimes the line, size can matter. I mean, it's just so weird because some days, you got 40-pound braid and it's like they don't care. And then other days it's, they're really inspecting that bait and that line. So I don't know if there's anything scientific to it or real numbers, but I think it matters in some scenarios.
It certainly
Okay.
does.
So what's the one condition that if you're fishing and you come up to this particular habitat and water conditions, you're like, this is when I need to have a fluke in my hand. What would that be? What would make you drop whatever you have and pick up that fluke?
I love if I come up to a lake and say it's an extended point or like maybe even like a floating like grass island or something next to open water that has like a hard grass line, that's like money. I'm gonna pick that
Grassland.
up and I'm gonna work the edge of that. And I'm not gonna work. I'll do multiple casts. I'll start real close to that grass line, and then maybe I'll do 4 feet out from that grass line, and then 10 feet out from that grass line until I find where those group of fish are holding, and then it's just that's my dream scenario. You know.
Okay.
That's a
Nice.
tough one for me. Because, it's just one of those things like, what am I throwing today?
Yeah, it is, and when it's as versatile as you guys are talking about, it's it's kind of hard to say. Well, this is exactly what I'd throw only in these situations.
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer, for that.
But it sounds like most of the time you guys are fishing off the bottom, right? Is that an accurate statement? So you're not letting
Yeah.
that bait necessarily hit the bottom. You're keeping it in the water column, keeping it active.
Yeah, I would say most of my bites on the fluke come from 0 to maybe 4 feet down. You know, if that.
So, is there any mistake that you made originally when you started fishing this bait that you had to corrected yourself? Would it be presentation, line, how you rig it? I know Josh shared his little tidbit about rigging them upside down. What is a typical mistake that somebody might make using this bait?
I mean, you really want to make sure that you get, when you're going to rig it, you get your hook point through the dead center. I think that's really important, or it tears up the action if you got bad rigging jobs.
Preserving the action. Okay.
I think for me, it's the hardest thing to learn, and I think it's learning it with any weightless bait is slow down. You know, there are some days where they'll hit it really fast, and you can work it almost as a top water or work it really high in the water column where they want to hit it. But for me, most days, I got to work that fluke just a little bit slower and just having that patience to know that it's only falling at, I mean, not even a foot a second, giving it some time to really do its thing because the bait will shine on its own, you know. So just fishing it slow.
Okay.
Yep.
Slow down. Slow down. Well, do you have any, both of you have any memorable catches with the soft jerk baits when you're in a tournament? Did you have any catches that, they put you in the money or put you close to that big bass pot at the end of the day?
I've got one. I was kind of in a tournament, kind of not. I think it was 2020 when we were doing like a monthly tournament on. It was when we can only go to St. Chris or Nashville or I think Clinton. Me and Lee went to St. Chris that day and we fished hard all day long and really didn't have anything to show for it. And I was just kind of frustrated. So I put in a small pond by my house. I was like, I just got to catch something, you know? And I went out there with a fluke, fished a hard grass line, and I ended up catching close to a 6 pounder out there. And it was just like, man, I just wish this was another lake so it could have counted for the tournament, you know? But that's my most memorable one, at least.
Nice. What about you, Kendall?
No, none memorable for me. I touched on our last episode. I was like, man, I got to get back to my confidence bait. And that's why I was so excited to, talk about flukes today. Because last year, I think I got so wrapped up in what everybody else was doing or what YouTube was saying or blah, 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 and
Mm-hmm.
just didn't really focus in on what I knew. So I'm really looking forward to using the fluke a lot more this year in our tournaments and really keeping that in the hand.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if you had a new kayak angler, fishing out kayaks is different than boats for a lot of different reasons. So is there any particular challenges or let's just say recommendations you would give specific to throwing these out of kayaks
For sure.
versus a boat?
When I'm in a boat, usually, and I don't know why it's like this, but usually I'm flipping towards the bank and bringing it back to me. I'm going straight on, right? In a kayak, it's so much easier to get parallel to the bank
Yeah.
and really kind of bomb cast it out there and bring it across for those fish that are ambushing. So that would be my number one tip is get parallel with that grass line or with the bank and really make the most out of your cast.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love doing
you're
that.
keeping that bait in that target zone for longer,
Yep.
right?
Getting that spot, the boats aren't going to go or it's too shallow for them to get that close to shore where you get parallel to it. I love doing that.
Yeah. I would say my biggest takeaway from fishing a fluke in a kayak, and I mentioned it earlier in the setup. It's a shorter rod for me that made a big difference between going from that 7.3 to a 6.6 is what I use, and it probably could even go all the way down like a 6 foot rod. But just being able to sit down in that kayak and work that rod without hitting the nose of the kayak or not getting out of the way, that helps with me.
And that's probably
So
why I use my spinning rod because all my spinning rods are 6.6. Yeah,
it's easier for me to move in the boat and to work that bait
Okay.
without hitting it or without having to like force my rod down or up. I can keep it right and
because you're twitching that bait. It's almost like you're working a jerk bait.
Okay.
In
That makes
some
sense.
scenarios.
Yeah. Okay. Well, funny enough, guys. So I was going through some of my old fishing tackle the other day, and I found a pretty nice. I forgot I even had this thing. It's a 6'6" medium casting reel that has a pistol grip on it, and I'm
Old
like, man,
school.
this could be nice, little short, little thing. So I may put that old school rod in the kayak this year. See what it does.
do the pistol grips fit in the rod holders anymore?
Don't know. It probably doesn't. It probably doesn't. And
Just
it's
have it on the
cork too.
deck at
It's a
all
cork
times.
pistol grip.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Josh, have you ever, speaking of different ways to do things, have you ever tried the donkey rig?
I have tried the donkey rig. I
So,
haven't had a whole lot of
sorry, go ahead.
success on it. So if you do, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I think one thing I do a little different, and I don't have one tied up. I could probably tie one up real quick, but
Yeah.
every rigging video that I've seen on the donkey rig, which is it's two flukes, right? Two soft jerk baits on one line. And I see a lot of guys use barrel swivels, and growing up, any type of swivel or snap or anything like that was like sacrilegious, how I learned. So what I do is, if I can get this in frame here, I will tie it like I do a crappie rig, a double jig rig. So I'll
Hmm.
tie a loop knot about 10 to 12 inches off the bottom and then leave a tag. So you put a loop knot up the line and it dangles. I don't know if you can really see that, but it's dangling off the main line. And then you take your other fluke, put it on the end, and you can tie a loop knot if you'd like, or just a Palmer, whatever you want to do. And you don't have any metal or, any flash
Ah.
on the on your bait, really against the
Now, Josh, that
signals.
would be legal for tournaments, right? Because it's legal in the state of Illinois to have a maximum of 2 hooks. Is that right?
I'd have to double check the
Okay.
official KBF rule standard, but
So I might
that
be
I'm not
showing
sure
something illegal
100%.
here, but yeah, it's two hooks, and they dart back and forth.
Yeah, they almost
Nice.
like they dance with each other. So like when you twitch it, they like doom doom doom. It's like a synchronized dance that they're doing. It's really well. I mean, I've always done it with the barrel swivel way, but I'll have to give that a try next.
So I was just looking real quick at KBF rules, and I don't. It just says basically you have to comply with all sports fishing statutes and regulations on the body of water in the state.
Yeah, it's two hooks for Illinois unless it's
Yeah,
Army Corps
that's what I was
license. You
thinking.
use all five. Like
Yeah,
for example, my home Lake of Egypt, you can use all five hooks on an umbrella rig.
Nice.
Little juice.
Yeah, I would think that would be something that, be closer to imitating a school of shad, right? So that you got twice as many hooks in the water.
That's right.
Boy, this has been really been an interesting conversation, guys. Now I think next time I'm at a tackle shop, I know what
Yeah.
bags of soft jerk baits. So just again, we'll just recap. So what I've heard you say was very versatile lure, can be fished virtually any depth that you want to fish at. It can be fished weighted, non-weighted. It can be fished slow, even a dead stick presentation or a fast presentation. And you're literally, the bait looks like what a predatory fish is going to be eating every day. Do you ever just use that as like a search bait to just find um, where concentrations of fish are, and then go back later with maybe, I don't know, like a plastic worm or something? Or you stick with a fluke once you find them?
All right, if you found them and they're biting, I'm gonna stick with the fluke.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great episode, guys. Any final thoughts you want to throw out there about this bait and recommendations for our listeners?
Yeah, I don't know if it was Matt Allen or the Fluke Master himself, but he said a quote that it's pretty undeniable, and it's that this fluke is going to work all the way from the tip of Florida all the way up to the Canada border and everywhere in between, because it is just versatile, and you can throw it anywhere, you can fish it at any depth you want if you got the patience to do it, and it'll catch fish anywhere.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is if you have somebody that, we kind of target newer fishermen or newer tournament anglers in this podcast. If you're somebody who's just trying to get started, what a better bait. There is no better bait, I would think, that's just so versatile. If you learn how to throw this, you can be pretty competitive right off the bat, I would think.
Yeah, Kendall, the only thing I don't like throwing a fluke in is a really windy day. I'm not sure if you're in the same boat as that. So, like, if I go out to St. Chris and it's blowing 25, which it normally is out there, I usually put the fluke away.
Yeah, it just, I mean, but now you know to add a little bit of weight to it.
Yeah,
So that's
I'll
hard to
definitely
say.
give that a try.
But yeah, if you're throwing it weightless, it's trash. If it's
Yeah,
blowing 15, 20 mile an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd also think that, you're talking about sinkers, with stripers. I would think that'd be a fantastic striper bait. Might be able to catch some
I guess
bycatch
that would
there.
be the
yeah.
time to switch from it if you're catching stripers and hybrids in a largemouth bass tournament. But the other day, that probably be
I don't know if I'm
fun.
catching stripers. It's going to be hard for me to change
It's
it.
gonna be fun. The other cool thing about a fluke is I catch way more than just bass on there. My PB crappie has actually come on a fluke.
No kidding. How big was that one? How big was the bait? Do you remember? Was it your standard
It's
size?
Standard
Really?
fluke. I was bass fishing and I caught about a 16-inch crappie. It was unbelievable.
That's usually how the big ones are caught, from people just randomly bass fishing, throwing a crankbait or fluke or whatever. The state record crappie came from Southern Illinois, and the guy was in a bass tournament, so I believe it.
Okay. Nice.
We will have to dust off our multi-species skills. We got a brand new tournament series coming to SICK this year that we're going to target a bunch of different species. It's going to be fun. I'm planning on releasing those details probably in the next month or so.
Nice.
Fine tuning the final couple things, and then it'll be released to the public.
Awesome. Hey, just a little bit more you get with your membership to the Southern Illinois Kayak Club, right? So
yeah,
I know memberships have been on sale for a little bit.
Yep.
Is there room for any more members? Because they are limited.
Always room for more members. I think last time I checked, we still had, I think it was like 12 slots available for the year.
Okay.
So act fast if you want to join.
And what's that website people would want to go to?
SIKCfishing.com.
All right. Great. Guys, I want to thank both of you for taking your time today. This has really opened my eyes. I've never fished this bait. Now I'm thinking that was a big mistake. Sounds like that is definitely something that should be in everybody's arsenal. And now anybody that takes 35 minutes to watch this podcast is going to have a great head start. So thank you both for sharing.
Of course.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right. For you listeners out there, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so we can keep these episodes coming to you. But we'll see you soon on the next episode.